Welcome back to the Pylon Camp YouTube channel. I'm your host, Mike, and this is our mock draft 6.0, and as promised, I will be drafting as if I was the GM. I don't think I'm going to do trades in this one just because I thought about it, and I still think they're kind of unrealistic to do trades until we see the final landscape of the draft. But as always, if you have beef with the draft order, it's not me. This is for the draft machine. But yeah, so this is mock draft 6.0. And as always, if you're going to call me an idiot, that's fine. I'm down to learn. Just explain why you disagree with the pick I made or why you disagree with the position I drafted. Anyways, and state which team you are referring to. 'Cause sometimes as fans, we often say, like, we should do this, we should do that, or they should do this, they should do that. And as a fan, you know who you're referring to. But as me reading a comment, I have no idea. So just make that clear, and we will be happy to discuss. Anyways, as GM of the Detroit Lions, I will be drafting. I did a lot more research into the team, into the situation, and I didn't do too much research for every single team, but I did a lot of research for a lot of these lower end teams. So starting with the Cowboys, the Lions, I still think QB is in play, but I think in this draft class where there's really, however you want to cut it, there's no clear-cut quarterback one. And when I looked at the O-line numbers, like according to PFF, they're not as bad as I was anticipating. But they definitely could use a right tackle. And I think at one, I wouldn't want to trade this pick because there are so many talented players on the draft board. And with all of that, I just don't think that to trade this pick makes the most sense in the world. But for a team like the Texans or the Jaguars or the Jets, it does make a lot of sense to trade back. So with the Lions, I'm going to go best player available, and this is someone who I believe is the best player available for basically actually a whole month now. The tweet I tweeted out was from November 13th, and I'm going to go with Aiden Hutchinson. You could definitely make the argument that Kayvon Thibodeaux is better, but I just think that Hutchinson's floor is way higher than Thibodeaux's is. I think if I was looking at these two as like a bust potential, I would look at Kayvon Thibodeaux way higher to bust than Aiden Hutchinson. At pick 2, we have the Jaguars. So there's a lot we could do with this pick, but since I'm drafting as if I was the GM, the highest graded edge rusher according to PFF after Josh Allen is Dwayne Smoot, Giad Ward, and Kayvon Chason, ranking 103 and 108 out of 110 edge rushers. I think why Evan Neal makes the most sense here, even though he's not the highest tackle on my board. The reason why I think he makes more sense than Ike Mekwonu, if you look back to last year, they did draft Walker Little to play left tackle. They have Cam Robinson on the franchise tag, and it begs the question, like, do they finally sign Cam Robinson? I'm not sure if they will. I think with as young of a team as this is, and if you draft someone like Evan Neal has experience on the right side, which is the position they're looking to fill. If Walker Little's not that guy that you drafted him thinking he is, you could put Evan Neal over there because he's a blue chip prospect, way higher floor than Walker Little. I just think it makes way more sense to take Evan Neal than Ike Mekwonu because Evan Neal can play both sides where Ike Mekwonu may be the better talent, but he doesn't have any experience on the right side of the line. So for that reason, we're going to go with Evan Neal here at pick 2. And then with the Texans, if I were the GM, and since I am acting as the GM, I would 100% look to trade back here. I think, though, with how the offseason is going to unfold, this is a situation where you're going to have multiple first-round picks, whether you trade with the Eagles and potentially snag 2 of these first-round picks, or you trade back with the Panthers and they move up to draft a quarterback or something like that. But I think with the Texans, I think pairing Jonathan Greenard with Kayvon Thibodeaux wouldn't be a bad option. There's a desperate need at corner, though, as well, being that the highest-graded corner is 98 out of 119 corners. That's Desmond King. You also have Terrence Mitchell, who's grading out 108 out of 119. Really leaving Tavier Thomas dancing out there all alone in the secondary. But there also is needs at safety, being that you have Justin Reed back there who's rating out 78 out of 89, and Eric Murray who's grading out 83 out of 89. And I'm not taking PFF as gospel, but it is a very useful tool when assessing a team like this. I didn't go too much into the cap space research, but looking at the Texans, a lot of fans want them to rebuild the line. And why I would trade this pick, even if we traded Deshaun Watson and got more first-round picks, is you could trade this pick to someone who's like oohing and ahhing over Kayvon Thibodeau still being on the board, potentially the Eagles or the Saints or any of these edge-needy teams. I don't think the Saints are as edge-needy, but I think that with how deep this O-line class is, you could definitely trade it back and get like another draft pick on top of the one you're going to get for Deshaun Watson. So you turn one pick into potentially 2 picks and later capital for 2023, possibly second-round capital. But since we're not going to do trades, just because I'll start doing trades when the draft order is finalized after the Super Bowl, I think with this pick, you want to go best player available. And with how Davis Mills has been playing, I think he's getting he's falling super under the radar because of where he was drafted and because of how many quarterbacks came out of this class. I would like to go lineman here. And I think someone who could come in and play, well, this is a tough pick because your secondary is basically a poop sandwich. And your O-line, if you're going to draft a quarterback next year, you want to put him in the best situation available. That's why I'm thinking we go O-line. But you have Derek Stingley and Kyle Hamilton right here. But do they make as immediate of an impact as someone for your offense as someone Ike Ekwonu would do? So this is a tough pick. I don't think you could let Kayvon Thibodeau fall past pick 3. I think his upside is just way too high. And I'm assuming you're trading Deshaun Watson. So let's say you trade him to the Panthers or the Broncos are potential. The Cleveland Browns are potential to trade for him. You're going to have another pick to take a lineman. So with that being said, and I think it's almost guaranteed Deshaun Watson is not a Texan next year. I think that taking the best player available in this spot makes the most sense, and that would be Kayvon Thibodeau. I think he makes an immediate impact, and I think the Jets are really upset that you guys just took him off the board. But going over to the Jets, so the Jets' offensive line, when I looked at it, according to PFF, is actually playing way better than I thought in the interior. They have Connor McGovern, who's I think he's a 9th-ranked center right now, and they have Elijah Vera Tucker and Greg Van Roten, holding down the middle. They desperately need tackles. I was not a Mekhi Becton fan coming out of the draft. I think he's a really good athlete, but I also think that he's not much more than a big athletic person because he can't stay healthy. He's not the most, he's not a Rashawn Slater where he's just this technically elite tackle. He's just a huge body to just stall out whoever's coming in off the left side. There's a desperate need at tackle. And when I looked at it, for me, I always thought, the Jets, you really need an edge rusher. And I think with Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas building this team, they definitely want to go in the trenches. But you did sign Carl Lawson, who got hurt. I think he tore his Achilles in preseason. So we haven't even seen what this defensive line looks with Carl Lawson. You have Michael Carter and Bryce Hall, who are your best options at corner, who aren't playing terrible, but they're not a Derek Stingley-esque type talent, right? And then you have Ashton Davis is playing decent at safety. He's ranked 43rd out of 89, according to PFF. And I think Marcus May is probably going to leave. So when you have someone like Kyle Hamilton just sitting here, because I think you're safe to gamble on one of these two, whichever one you like more, just being that I think the Giants are going to go lineman, if I were the GM. So what I would do, being that how soundly the Giants' safety position is with, Logan Ryan and Xavier McKinney, I would take Derek Stingley because there's a higher likelihood that the Giants skip out on a lineman and take Stingley here over going back-to-back linemen. So we're going to take Stingley, just assessing the board. I think the Giants definitely keep both of these picks, right? And with these picks, it makes all the sense in the world to take Ike Ekwonu because Andrew Thomas is playing lights out. You need help. You need a Nate Solder replacement. But Andrew Thomas has experience on the right side of the line. So even though Ike Ekwonu isn't that well versed on the right, he could kick in and play guard, or you could just shuffle Andrew Thomas over to the right and put Ekwonu at left tackle. So to me, that was a very easy pick because it makes all sense in the world. Because if Daniel Jones is out, if his career is over, right, with this neck thing that's going on with him, as a GM, assuming that I am the GM of the New York Giants, I'm very anti let's take a quarterback to take a quarterback. And being with Jimmy Garoppolo could be available. Derek Carr could be available. Teddy Bridgewater could perhaps be available, depending on what the Broncos do in the offseason. You could get a stopgap quarterback, fix up the line, and then completely rebuild and draft Bryce Young or someone next year if Joe Judge and Daniel Jones don't work out, or if Daniel Jones' career is over, which is a very real possibility, I feel like. And with that, I think you have two franchise tackles with Andrew Thomas and who do we just draft? Ike Ekwonu. I think the next best player available is he is one of my favorite players in the draft, is Tyler Linderbaum. You could argue all day it's early to take a center, and it's a value argument, but I think someone this talented and someone who's going to make this immediate of an impact, it makes all the sense in the world to take a center who, Billy Price is grading out when I checked PFF, I think 39th, which it doesn't even put him in the starting category. Of all the 32 centers, Billy Price he's 6 spots lower than backup centers. So I don't think it makes any sense to take or to leave your center position that vacant with what's going on, with how bad your line is. Because to me, a lot of these teams that we're going to talk about later, I'm very anti, let's draft a quarterback and put him in the worst position possible, which we're going to get to in just a second. But going to the Jets pick, if this is how the board is going to play out, with Evan Neal, Aiden Hutchinson being on, which I think the Jets would like, Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau, who are also candidates for the Jets to draft, obviously, I think with the two best tackles off the board, right? And then the best center, even though they're not bad at center, but their best center, you could go Charles Cross here, being how desperate you are at tackle. Excuse me. I just think it's a little bit early. I also like the idea of taking a receiver here, but I think if that were the case, I was the GM, I would want to trade back with, let's say, the Saints possibly, or the Steelers or the Broncos, who would be looking to jump after a quarterback. Right? Because there's none of these teams in between here, besides maybe the Falcons or the Eagles, would take Jameson Williams or Treylon Burks or Garrett Wilson. I don't think they would, just being that the Falcons' edge rush is non-existent, and the Eagles probably are going to want to take the best defensive pieces available. That's why if you're all right, we don't like Karlaftis that much, we don't really like the idea of taking a safety this high, even though Kyle Hamilton is a freak of nature and he will be worth the pick, I would trade it back. But because we're not trading, and because of how impactful safety could be here, or Kyle Hamilton could be, and your inefficiencies at the safety position, I like the idea of taking Kyle Hamilton because it really rounds out your defense. Now you have a solid cornerback too in Michael Carter or what's his name? Bryce Hall playing decent. I think if they were covering less talented receivers, they would look a lot better. And Derek Stingley is going to play that role of playing cornerback one right away, and he's probably going to play well. I don't really like the idea of his ankle injury is so bad, blah 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 blah. I think that it's a concern, but it's not that big of a concern, and that'll be ironed out come combine or when they test or whatever. So I think if you because you have Carl Lawson, I don't like the idea of really taking an edge because you don't know what this edge room looks like with Carl Lawson and John Franklin Myers. So now you give Saleh a much better defense top to bottom from the front all the way to the safety position in the back, but you could make the argument all day that you need a tackle, and I think it's a very, very well-balanced argument. But I think if you're going to pass on Ekwonu, I would just take the best player available and fix your defense. Especially if I'm Joe Douglas and I have a coach like Robert Saleh, I want to give him the pieces for him to succeed in what he does best. It doesn't make sense to give him to make his strength weak and his weakness strong, if that makes sense. So, anyways, at pick 8, like we talked about, if I was a GM and like Kenny Pickett's on the board, Matt Corral's on the board, I understand that. But let's look at what the previous GM did. He traded Teddy Bridgewater, he traded Teddy Bridgewater for, no, they just traded picks, I think. They traded a 6th-round pick in 2022, a 2nd-round pick in 2023, and a 4th-round pick in 2023 for Sam Darnold. So you're very invested in Sam Darnold. To me, I think in a weak quarterback class, it makes the most sense to shore up that line and put your next quarterback of the future in a better position to succeed. So with that being said, I really like the idea of taking Charles Cross here, but I also like Kenyon Green. I think Kenyon Green is going to play tackle at the next level, and I also think Charles Cross is a very good tackle. I have my concerns with him. Nothing to do with the competition or anything like that with some of these other prospects. I just have a few concerns with his technical skill set, but he's taken a massive leap this year. He's been playing phenomenal. We're going to go with Charles Cross. I know a lot of Panthers really want to take quarterback, but if I was the GM, right, we're invested in Sam Darnold, whether we like it or not. We are invested in Sam Darnold because of what the previous GM did. Let's build up this line for the quarterback because next year you have the capital to move up for quarterback. You can move up a few spots. So I like the idea of taking the best tackle available and making sure that our quarterback of the future hopefully is in the best position to succeed. So we're going to take Charles Cross here at pick 8. Now, with the Falcons, there's a lot we could do with this. I think that you have Karlaftis just sitting here, who, like, I understand a lot of people have a lot of issues with his ability to bend off the edge or his flexibility. With how dominant he is just in brute strength and how effective he is at it, I'm not sure it's the biggest of concerns. I think it limits his ceiling for sure. You also have players like Jordan Davis still on the board or DeMarvin Leal still on the board. I just think it's a little bit early for Jordan Davis because I think his capability as a pass rusher is very limited. I think that was definitely displayed in the Alabama game. I think with a prospect like Karlaftis here, I mean, the edge rush room in Atlanta is basically non-existent. Like, it's all of their edge rushers, according to PFF, are very low on the totem pole. So I think if you add someone like Karlaftis, it makes an immediate impact right away. But I think you also can make the argument for a wide receiver here because I don't think, as much as I love Kyle Pitts, I don't think you could keep him as the number one option because there's no timetable on Calvin Ridley. But I think this wide receiver class is also very deep that you could get one later on in the second. So we're going to go with Karlaftis here. And then at pick 10, I think the Eagles are going to be very upset that Karlaftis is off the board. But we're picking back-to-back here, right? So here's what I would do if I'm the Eagles. Because I think, at pick 20, like, wide receivers to me, like, unless you're getting a Jamar Chase, they're a dime a dozen, realistically. But we also know the Eagles stink at drafting wide receivers. And it took a Heisman winner for them to get it right. So for me, I would take the two players with the most maximum upside for where we're drafting. And to me, I would take David Ojabo. I think he is the next. I would almost take him over Karlaftis because I think his ceiling is much, much higher than Karlaftis is because he's been playing football since his junior year of high school, and he just is breaking out this year. I think this is someone in the NFL in a good defense where he's going to have support in Philadelphia. They could be able to maximize his talent. And then going into pick 11, I think with how bad your second linebacker is in Alex Singleton, not that he's horrible, but I think there's definitely players here where it would be an immediate upgrade. I really like the idea of taking Nakobe Dean. And we've done this before, but I think if I'm picking as a GM, I want to take a receiver because we need to build this team to figure out if Jalen Hurts is the guy or if we could ride with Minshew for a year. And I think making our defense stronger in a conference or in a division that is very talented on offense. Like, the Giants have the pieces to be talented. They just haven't figured it out yet. And they've had a horrible head coach and a horrible offensive coordinator. You have the Cowboys, who you have to play twice a year. And Washington's a very well-balanced offense. They're a quarterback-away type team, I think. I also really like the idea of them taking a wide receiver to kind of balance out or relieve Terry McLaurin. So with that, I think your two options are Nakobe Dean or a cornerback, and Andrew Booth is on the board. Ahmad Gardner's on the board, who I would have over Andrew Booth. I also like Trent McDuffie a lot. But for me, I want to take the most immediate impact player, and I know that would be Nakobe Dean. I know Nakobe Dean would, sometimes cornerbacks take a little bit longer to develop, and maybe it's a little bit early for a linebacker per se, but I think that this is a player where what he's bringing to the table, and he's like a focal point for the best defense in the entire nation. Like, the defense really is, like, if you had to put it into a pecking order, I think Nakobe Dean, for Georgia I'm talking about, Nakobe Dean would be like number 1 or number 2 on that team. And then probably have Jordan Davis in there somewhere. But that defense is talented top to bottom. And then picking at pick 12, we have the Vikings. And just assessing, like, are we going to rebuild? Are we going to ride with Kirk Cousins for a little bit longer, being that his contract? I think, and I kind of made this point in one of the other mock videos, Danielle Hunter is constantly hurt, right? And you're going to need someone to replace Danielle Hunter, just being that he's always off the field more than he's on the field, even though he's an insane talent. So for me, I'd be a little bit upset that David Ojabo went off the board if I was the Vikings GM. However, there is a play, like, we could take Jordan Davis and we'd be all right. And it's a little bit early for a safety. I really like the idea of taking Trayvon Walker. I think this is someone with a ton of upside. His sample size is really, really small. You also could go Kingsley Enagbare, who's kind of playing way higher than where his rank is, in my opinion. And if we weren't going to go edge, I think I would definitely dabble in the cornerback realm or linebacker. I think you could go. I think interior D-line, like Jordan Davis is going to be a home run pick. But again, I question his ability to get to the quarterback, right? So I think for me, the best thing to do would be to get some assurance for Danielle Hunter, and for me, that's Trayvon Walker. I think he does have a very high ceiling. I think once we see him at his pro day and we see his combine measurements, he's gonna blow a lot of people away. The problem is with him, in my opinion, is his sample size. It's very, very small. And this is a pick I've made a ton of times before. We're going to do it again, especially if I was a GM, because I think our team is well-rounded enough. And I do have confidence in Jameis Winston for at least another year to keep us competitive. We saw how competitive they were with Jameis Winston. I'm going to take Jameson Williams to put it on the other side of Michael Thomas. And it is no secret that the Saints like their Ohio State boys, and I think that Jameson Williams, former Ohio State player, he transferred. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the class, if not the best wide receiver in the class. I think my wide receiver 2 is going to go off the board very, very soon, if not here. And Treylon Burks, I love Treylon Burks. I think he's going to be like a DK Metcalf-esque type player, maybe a little bit more talented, a little bit able to do more in his route tree in that perspective. But I think with how big of a need being able to stop the run is, Jordan Davis is going to do that immediately for the Raiders. Again, as the GM, I'm not too into it because we have so much weakness at O-line, and we don't know if Derek Carr's staying. So that begs the question of, do we want to take Kenyon Green here? Someone I'm really high on. He could play guard. He could play tackle. You could put him next to Alex Leatherwood, who they have at right guard, and shore up the offensive line. I think, though, your offense is competitive enough to keep you in games unless you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the idea of going Jordan Davis because that's going to make you more competitive against everybody who's been able to run all over you. Like the Giants were even able to run all over the Raiders, and the Giants are one of the worst run offenses in the entire NFL. Pick 15 with the Steelers, and I think if I was the GM, I really like the idea that Kenny Pickett is here. But I probably, knowing the Steelers organization and knowing the coaching with Mike Tomlin, we probably don't have this pick because we're going to trade it for Aaron Rodgers or something like that. So I think we're going to have to go offensive line, and I think you can't go wrong with someone as versatile as Kenyon Green, being that he could play tackle or interior offensive line. And I think if our best player on offense in Najee Harris, we need to set him up with the best position to succeed. We need to put him in the best position to succeed, running inside the tackles and outside the tackles. So we're going to take Kenyon Green here. I think that's a very good pick. Here's where probably the first quarterback goes off the board in the Denver Broncos. Again, like if I was GM, I'm picking up the phone and asking about Deshaun Watson or Aaron Rodgers, just because this team to me is definitely a quarterback away, especially with that backfield, especially with the wide receivers, the weapons they have at their disposal, and especially how solid their offensive line is. Definitely taking a step back, but it's still solid. So for me, if I were taking a quarterback, I like the fact that Matt Corral here is at pick 16. I think this is a very comfortable pick with how set up he would be to come in there. Like, this is someone with a high ceiling. He definitely needs to develop. He's definitely not the most pro-ready, but being that you have Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon's probably gone, but Javonte Williams is good enough by himself. You have Jerry Jeudy, you have Cortland Sutton and Tim Patrick, and you have a pretty solid offensive line, and you have a defense that could bail you out. I think if you take Matt Corral, he has enough raw ability to keep you competitive while he develops, but you want to see him develop in timing. You want to see him develop in reading a defense in the whole nine. At pick 17, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. I think with how this board has played out, and I don't even know who's left. All right. So I think they definitely need, to me, like the Bengals, I said this in Power Rankings video. To me, their ability to run the ball effectively determines whether their win percentage goes up or down. That just seems obvious, but I think when they have Joe Mixon rolling, they're like 20% more likely to win a game. When it's all on Joe Burrow's shoulders, I think it's a little bit more difficult. It's not anything in his ability. It's just a lot to ask of him, being that he's a sophomore quarterback, will be a junior quarterback going into this year, as in 2022. I think tackle, whichever one brings you the best ability to run the ball the best. And Darian Kennard is listed as interior O-line, but I think he will play right tackle at the next level. You could get him, or you could get an absolute mauler in Trevor Penning. And I think that if I'm looking at the Bengals and I'm the general manager, I want to give Joe Burrow, being his injury was so bad, the most protection possible. And I think Trevor Penning does that more so than Darian Kennard, because I think he's a more versatile player. At 6'7", 320, he's an absolute beast. Now, it does kind of remind me a lot of Mekhi Becton, but there isn't as high of an injury concern. Like, let's remember that Mekhi Becton couldn't even finish the combine because he got hurt during the combine. So we're gonna take Trevor Penning. I think you definitely go lineman here, but you know. Now this is where I want to get spicy. If I'm the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, right? We have Kevin Stefanski, just won Coach of the Year in 2020. We have a solid roster. I'm calling about Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson and even Russell Wilson. Even though Russell Wilson said he wouldn't waive his trade clause for Cleveland, I just don't think he knows that they're interested in him, right? I think this is a quarterback away type of team, and I really like the idea of going with Kenny Pickett. We're seeing Kenny Pickett fly up boards. He has a way bigger arm than Baker Mayfield does. He's way more accurate than Baker Mayfield consistently, and we saw his ability to scramble on display, right? He literally changed college football rules with his fake slide. I like Kenny Pickett here at pick 18. Now, will Browns fans probably be crucifying me over this pick? Probably. But I don't want to go into 2022 having to pay Baker Mayfield about 5% of our cap space. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think he's proven anything. He was barely able to beat the Ravens with their second-string quarterback and their entire second-string safety, and he still managed to throw a pick. I like the idea of going Kenny Pickett, being that he's going to have the support system in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and D'Ernest Johnson. And that O-line, they just re-signed their two guards. And I think you could go wide receiver, but I think that it makes more sense to just draft one in the second. Like, Cleveland is in a very good spot when it comes to cap space, draft picks. I don't think it makes sense to pay Baker Mayfield, seeing that you're seeing his ceiling in this year. arguably are a better team this year, and you might not make it as far as you did last year. And a lot of it, in my opinion, is due to Baker Mayfield's inability to play quarterback. I'm just being honest. But I'll probably get flamed for that. It's fine. Anyway, pick 19, we have the Washington football team. Now, again, I think I will admit I've been a critic of Taylor Heinicke, so I'm not going to front like I'm this Taylor Heinicke believer. But I think that he is a stopgap quarterback, and I think if you want to ride him for one more year, that's fine. To me, this makes the most sense to get a quarterback we could potentially develop in Malik Willis. But if we want a pro-ready quarterback to compete for the division, I like Sam Howell a lot. We saw what Sam Howell could do with Javonte Williams, De'Ami Brown, Michael Carter, those guys. He was very good. He had a very good 2020 campaign. You take all those away, and now he's having a down year, and I don't blame him as much for the down year as much as I would blame the circumstances he's been thrust into, right? So, for me, I like Sam Howell, but again, picking up pick 19, if we're not going to take an immediate impact player, like I think Malik Willis' ceiling is much higher than Sam Howell's. Much higher. So, for me, I think we ride with Malik Willis and hope for the best. I think he has the potential to develop, but I don't know, because if I'm the GM, I really don't believe he's going to reach his ceiling. There's just a lot that he would have to do, and it would take more than 2 years. And I think for a team that's ready to compete now, it almost makes a lot of sense to go with a wide receiver, because I think Taylor Heinicke can get it done. I don't know how far he takes you into the playoffs, but I think with Garrett Wilson especially, or Treylon Burks being on the board here, to put aside Terry McLaurin, your offense is much more potent, right? Decisions. I also would really make the argument you need a tackle, but I think with who's left, unless you want to go Darian Kennard, it doesn't make the most sense. You have Nicholas P., so we call him on this channel because I can't pronounce his name. We have Nicholas P. available, but if we're going best player available, we probably go with Garrett Wilson. You could take Brisker, who I don't hate. I don't hate at pick 19. But you have Landon Collins on that fat contract. So, do you want to take the dead cap hit and take his successor, who probably will start over him right away, and then just pay Landon Collins for nothing? To do nothing besides come in and give Brisker a break. I think if I was the GM, I would be so sick and tired of seeing this team with just flounder at quarterback for so many years that I'd want to take my own guy, but I want him to develop. And I did say preach at the beginning of the video, if I would want a quarterback to be drafted into a position to succeed. And I think Washington's offense is that good with Antonio Gibson, with J.D. McKissick, with Terry McLaurin, with that offensive line. I think he would play very well. But then again, knowing that I have Ron Rivera as my head coach, do I want to give him the defensive pieces he needs to make that defense more elite than it's reverting to from 2020? That defense was so elite, and it took almost 3/4 of the season to get back to form, but it's getting there. So, do we want to take the safety here is the question. I think you take if I'm taking quarterback, I'm taking Malik Willis, just because of his upside is so high. But I don't know if that puts you in a position to compete, right? Because odds are I'm drafting Malik Willis to not play for a year. So, this sucks. It kind of feels like Washington has a luxury pick almost. And I really like the idea of them taking a wide receiver. But I'm just so tired of playing this QB carousel that it really comes down to, do I think Sam Howell could win a playoff game, is how I'm viewing it. 'Cause I don't know if he's good enough to beat Dak Prescott for the division and how good that Giants team is. that Cowboys team and how good that Eagles team is becoming. Do I think Sam Howell is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts? Probably. Like, I think he could be better than Jalen Hurts. Do I think he could be better than Dak Prescott? No. Do I think Malik Willis could be better than Dak Prescott? Yes. So I think we're going to go with Malik Willis. I think you just got to ride, like, you got to assume the best and trust. Like, if I was the GM, I'd have to trust the training staff and the coaching staff that I've put into place to get the absolute maximum out of this team. And if my coaching staff can't, then I have failed as a GM to put the right pieces around him. But I think with this, how this team is built, they could be very competitive in 2023 if Malik Willis plays up to his potential after year one. Even if he plays up to half of his potential, I think he could be they could be very competitive in the division. Coming in at pick 20, we have the Bills, and being with what just happened to what's his name? Tre'Davious White. I think we need a cornerback replacement, and we need more depth at corner, like especially after what we just watched with that Tampa Bay game. I like taking Ahmad Gardner here. I think he's definitely the second most third most pro ready. Hold up. Yeah, the second most pro ready corner to come out of this draft class. It would be between him or Trent McDuffie for me. But because I think Booth has the upside, it's just will he play to it? Because we like a lot of critics, and like I kind of agree myself, bring up that NC State game, right? And if you watch that game, he just gets bullied off. Like if it's a very physical, like him against Traylon Burks would be an absolute nightmare. And I think in that AFC East division, he could definitely have a few years to develop because it's not the most physical position at the most physical wide receiver division, being that the Patriots are making it work with what they got. I think he would have the athleticism to keep up with an Elijah Moore type talent. I think him being on the Bills would be the best case scenario. And then with the Dolphins, I think Andrew Booth would have the talent to keep up with Jalen Waddle. But I think he would get absolutely murdered by Devontae Parker. So I think Ahmad Gardner gives you the most well-roundedness of the two. Like, he's athletic enough to keep up with those players, and he's good enough where he's not going to get bullied off the line. So that's why I'm going with Ahmad Gardner, especially if I'm the Bills and I want to reclaim my title as division leader. I'm going with the best player for right now. If I want to play the long term, I'm going with Andrew Booth, but I think with how good the Bills are, I don't think you need to play the long term. But at pick 21, we have the Eagles. Now, if we want to keep going defense, we go with Trent McDuffie. I think that's absolutely the right pick. Or you could get a Jordan Battle, a Jaquan Brisker here if you want to go safety. But I think that with our third pick, right, we've addressed so much of the defenses in we addressed the edge rusher room, we've addressed the linebacker room. I think I would want to take a shot at addressing the offense. And for me, personally, my wide receiver 2 is Traylon Burks, and they have wide receiver listed as like their last need, which I think is so dumb because Jalen Reagor is just not that good. I wouldn't even say he's good. Like I think he would be below not that good if that was a ranking. And then you have Quez Watkins. Like you have Devontae Smith, but like he is getting double covered. You need to get someone to open up the offense. And especially if you're going to roll with Minshew, who in my opinion is a better thrower than Jalen Hurts, Traylon Burks makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. Now, if you're going to roll with Hurts, Garrett Wilson probably makes the most sense because he could do everything and he would be a very good slot receiver. But you have Quez Watkins who's not playing that bad. I would want the true X in Traylon Burks because then you have a really well-rounded offense. You have a good offensive line. You have decent quarterback play. Like I don't think Jalen Hurts is playing that bad. You have good running backs. And you've already addressed two pieces of your defense that are like you need to address. I really like the idea of them taking a wide receiver who could be a wide receiver 1. So if you put Traylon Burks with Devontae Smith, now you have a very, very powerful or potent passing attack. Because Devontae Smith is kind of like a do-it-all wide receiver, where Treylon Burks is like an absolute animal dominator on the perimeter. So I really like Treylon Burks for the Eagles because if you do roll with Minshew, like we've seen his arm talent. Again, it was against the Jets, but he wasn't that bad on the Jaguars. Like Jaguars fans might say otherwise, but I really don't think that he is as bad as people make him out to be. Now we have the Dolphins at 22. I don't really agree with the edge need. I think Jalen Phillips, like this isn't updated for how well Jalen Phillips has been playing, even though they've been playing pretty crummy competition. I think the pick is to take a wide receiver, and I think you want someone who's going to complement Jalen Waddle's ability to attack underneath and to attack over the top. And for me, that's Drake London. Now, it begs the question, is Drake London a first-round talent? Personally, I think he is. I think Slovis is really limiting his ceiling as a wide receiver, and I also think his ability to catch screens and attack any part of the field is very undervalued because it wasn't on display at USC this year before he got hurt, but he had 800 yards in 7 games. So I think he can do it. I just think he needs a better quarterback, and I think Tua, he may not be the guy. It's still out, like the jury's still out, but I like Drake London a lot. And I think Drake London makes a lot of sense for Miami. They do need a wide receiver because they're probably going to let Devontae Parker walk. They just cut Travis Fulgham today, and I don't think Devontae Parker is coming back. But people are going to freak out that the 2 Ohio State kids are still on the board, but I'm not too crazy about them if I'm being honest. Then at pick 23, this is where I've been going Jordan Davis because I think it makes the most sense to be able to just – because their biggest weakness is the run defense, right? Jordan Davis completely addresses that just because of how much space he takes up, and you wouldn't need that much pressure added in the middle of your defensive line because you have Joey Bosa and you have decent edge rushers. But I think someone like DeMarvin Leal, who could literally do both, is one of the best picks that they can make here, especially with DeMarvin Leal coming kind of back into a top prospect category. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then for me at pick 24, if I was the Lions, we desperately need a wide receiver, being that we have Josh Reynolds and St. Brown, who's been playing very well. St. Brown has been playing exceptionally well. You could go Jahan Dotson, but I think if you want to go back-to-back receivers, which doesn't seem like the worst idea to me, just because of their two players that are leading the receiving category are DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. I think if you go Garrett Wilson and then Jaquan Brisker, you actually have a very good wide receiver room. And I think Jared Goff could make that work. Because I think Jared Goff is playing bad, but he really doesn't have a ton to work with. So for me, we definitely are going to take a wide receiver here. And I think the best one left on the board would be Garrett Wilson. I think he's better than Olave. People keep saying Olave's smooth, which I agree with, but my new standard for smooth is CeeDee Lamb. I don't think he's that smooth. If you watch CeeDee Lamb just run any route, it's he's not trying, oh my God, he's wide open. So I think Garrett Wilson is would not be as much of a CeeDee Lamb type player, but he is definitely a great route runner, can play out of the slot, can play on the perimeter. He can attack any part of the field, and I think he does it exceptionally well. And I think with Jared Goff, who's not as bad as people are saying, but he is bad, he could work with this. If you give him if you upgrade your wide receiver room, you could give him a lot to play with. But anyways, at pick 25, we have the Ravens. For me, you got to go corner or address your offensive line, just being that it's not as good as you thought it was going to be. There's really no edge I would take here besides Kingsley and Agbari or I like Jermaine Johnson a lot. And just check it. Yeah, Perrion Winfrey's pretty good, but I don't think he's a first round good. So I think we take the best corner available in Andrew Booth. I just think that with how banged up your secondary has been all season, including preseason, you need to do something to fix that or at least provide depth. And I think if you're going to ask Andrew Booth to come in and play cornerback 3, you're going to be in a very good situation. I think that's and the Ravens to me are a team that is very good at maximizing their draft picks potential. And And I think with a prospect like Andrew Booth, who has like an incredibly high ceiling, they're the team where like he's gonna shine. And then coming in at pick 26, we have the Cowboys, and I think like again you could go an Agbari here, which would be a solid pick. I don't agree with wide receiver being there. I think it's because Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper are up their contract. They're in a contract year, so like that would make sense. But I think when you have Cedric Wilson, who's not bad, and a lot of free agents like Allen Robinson would be a free agent. I would imagine they're going to re-sign Gallup or Cooper. They're going to pick one. And they have 3 safeties. I think 2 of them are they're in a contract year. I think they need a true cornerback too. And with how far Trent McDuffie has fallen, I think this is an absolute steal of a pick. The Cowboys would have another home run first round draft. At least, I don't know. I just think this is you put him with Trayvon Diggs and you have like a very good corner room. And I think corner, like their secondary is the weakest part of their team. And I think addressing that, because like Micah Parsons is an incredible edge rusher, even though he's a linebacker. Like he is grading out as one of the highest edge rushers according to PFF. And like again, PFF's not gospel, but you see it in games and you see analytically how well he's doing, and you're like, wow, like this kid can literally do everything. So that's why it makes sense here. And then being with what wide receivers are left for the Chiefs to pick from, I like Olave here, and I like Jahan Dotson. I also think once they test, George Pickens is going to fly up the board along with John Mechie. But I think with how bad, like the defense has come alive. Don't get me wrong, but their defense goes through spurts, right? Like it's good, and then bad, good, bad. So I think you want to provide consistency to their defense, and this is someone who's not getting a lot of love, and like Broshmo is really into him if you watch any Broshmo. Kingsley Enagbare, and I think he mocked him to the Chiefs, and I really like that pick. I also like Drake Jackson here a lot. I just don't, like I think Enagbare is a way better prospect than Drake Jackson is. Devin Lloyd is still on the board too. Could go linebacker. But I think we're going to go edge. I think their edge rush is just non-existent. Their defensive line's playing well, but it's really from the interior. I'm going to go with Enagbare. Let's go with Drake Jackson, just to switch it up. I think this is a very solid pick. I think Drake Jackson, like when he tests, he's going to test well, but I think he's going to have to show in the Senior Bowl. I think he's a senior, right? No, he's a junior. I think when it comes to testing, he's going to test out really well. But we'll see. Like we'll see how this kid could play in the NFL. Being at USC, not facing the best of talents, but pretty good talent. And then pick 28, we have the Green Bay Packers. I think that like wide receiver has to be in play just because Devontae Adams is going to leave. If Aaron Rodgers leaves, which seems very likely, Devontae Adams is going to leave. And I think you want to go get a replacement for him. See, like this is my issue with Chris Olave, though. I don't think he's a wide receiver 1. I don't think he'll ever be a wide receiver 1. He'll be a very good 2, but I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver 1. I also would argue that quarterback is definitely in play because I think Jordan Love is trash, frankly. But if I'm going best player available and I want to address a big need on the team and get incredible value, I think I have to go with Devin Lloyd. He is the best player available. I think for positional value, it's the right spot for linebacker. I think he's going to have a bigger impact on the defense than Chris Olave. And I think with how good of a coach Matt LaFleur is, I think he's going to need to start winning games from defense once Rodgers leaves. And I think they're going to need to provide the best tools for him to make that possible. So with that being said, we're going to go with Devin Lloyd. Coming in at pick 29, would be very upset to see Devin Lloyd just go straight off the board. We have the Titans. And I think, hold up. Roger McCreary's still here. I really would argue they need a wide receiver too, just with how inconsistent Julio Jones' health is. You could take Sam Howell because I think Ryan Tannehill has 2 more years left on his contract, but I don't know if it makes the most sense this year. You could go Desmond Ridder. Like, that would seem like a good pick to have him just sit for a while and then hopefully break out once Tannehill's gone and when it would be Ritter's year 3. But I think if we want like a very good wide receiver 2, potentially wide receiver 3, we would go Chris Olave. I think with how banged up this team is, though, like you'd want to address corner. And with Roger McCreary being here, he kind of gave Bryce Young fits in that Ohio State Auburn game. But part of me is like you want to go offensive line because you want to maximize your strength, which is your run game. And you're not going to get rid of Julio Jones because of the contract. So I guess we want to go tackle. Christian Harris wouldn't be a bad pick. I think it's just a little bit early. If I was the GM, I'm just a huge trenches guy. Like, I think if you have the best offensive line, you maximize every piece in your offense. And for me, like, Nicholas P makes the most sense here. Just because you're gonna make Derrick Henry better off, you're gonna make Ryan Tannehill better off, you're gonna make AJ Brown better off, you're gonna make Julio Jones better off. You're gonna maximize the entire offense. At pick 30, we have the Bucks. Just trying to see who's left because this has been a wacky draft for me. This, to me, like, so you have Chris Godwin, and who knows if he's staying or not. I'm leaning towards he stays, just because there's a good chance that this Bucs team goes to the Super Bowl or comes very close, and they have one more year with Tom Brady. I think they would, if they wanted to franchise tag Chris Godwin one more time, they definitely could, and I think he'd be down for that. I'm just trying to think who their wide receiver 3 is. It's not Scotty Miller, is it? Because Tyler Johnson's been playing a ton. I don't know. I think you actually can make the argument like you want to put Brady in the best position to succeed, and we've seen with New England he doesn't need the best receivers. And I think Darian Kennard, who could play guard or tackle, would actually be a very solid pick here. Just because you're going to make Leonard Fournette's life easier, you're going to make Ronald Jones' life easier if he plays again. It just makes a ton of sense. And then with the Patriots, knowing Bill Belichick, but if I was a GM, I'm going to do whatever Bill Belichick wants. And that would take a corner. You have J.C. Jackson, who you need to pay. You just lost Stephon Gilmore. You need a wide receiver, but your offense is fine. Like, the offense is fine right now, and you're making it work without like an elite wide receiver, and they're becoming more aggressive throwing it down the field. In Week 12, Mac Jones. It's funny because like you say, like they're throwing it becoming more aggressive, and Mac Jones throws 3 times. But in Week 12, Mac Jones had the highest intended air yards at like 8.3 or something like that. So I think your offense is good enough where you could sneak in a receiver in round 2, and maybe you land like a George Pickens or a John Mechie or one of these guys. But I think to address the biggest need and what makes your team good is your offensive line and your cornerback room. So I would take Roger McCreary out of Auburn. I think he's like just a very talented cornerback, and I think he's going to maximize their defense. And for here, we're going to go with edge, I think. Just being that the corners that I would take or deem first round worthy are all gone. Oh, shoot. Kaiir Elam's still here. Never mind. I still think you need to go edge, but I'm a huge Elam fan. I think he's an incredible talent, and I think he's going to test out really well. He's having a down year for him, and when you set the bar so high for yourself, if you don't meet it, you're technically having a regression year. Well, you're not technically. You are having a regression year. I think he's going to be that good. I think this Florida team's pretty poop, and I think from what we've seen with Elam, he can be an elite cornerback 1. He's humongous. He's 6'2", 215, I think. So he's bigger than average. Because I think he's 6'2", 200. He's bigger than average. I think this kid makes that defense way more well-rounded. Edge rusher is needed, but I think with how deep this edge rusher class is, you could get one later on in the draft. But we're going to take Elam here. And that is going to do it for Mock Draft 6.0 if I was the GM. Notable people that, like, the most notable person to me who fell out of the first is Chris Olave. That could be because, like, I'm, like, pretty low on Olave, to be honest with you. Just because, like, if I'm drafting in the first round, and I'm taking a wide receiver, I want someone who could be a wide receiver 1. I don't want someone who could be a wide receiver 2 because, like, Terry McLaurin got drafted in the 3rd, and he's an elite wide receiver 1. Like, I don't want to waste my first-round pick on someone who might not be what I'm expecting him to be. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this mock draft. I think we did pretty well. I think if I was the GM, made some pretty good moves. I think people are going to be furious with this one. Probably this one, too, if I had to be honest. But anyway, guys, let me know how I did. Let me know if you'd want me as your GM. Let me know 3 things in the comment section if you made it this far. Did I draft for the right position? Did I draft the right player? And if not, what would you change? But that's going to do it for this mock draft video. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. And we will catch you next Monday for the next mock draft video. Peace!